The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. We have a growing number of people logging in. Thank you all for joining us today. I'll begin by introducing myself. I am Diane Frendak, the Director of Membership Services at the American Astronomical Society, and I'd like to kindly welcome you to today's webinar, Navigating Real-Time Leadership Challenges. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to review the usual webinar items. First, everyone in this webinar is in listen-only mode. However, you are encouraged to share your questions by typing them into the questions pane or in the questions area or box in the control panel. I will collect these questions for the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation, and I'll typically nudge attendees about half past the hour via the chat function just to remind people to send in their questions. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Society's website and YouTube channel in the next few days. Right, moving on. I would like to thank everyone who submitted an abstract for the AAS winter meeting, which will be held in January and will be virtual. I have some deadlines to announce. We are hoping that everyone who submitted the abstract and is doing an iPoster or a talk will register before the 15th of November so we can get everything squared for the program. Then we have some dependent care grant requests due in mid-month and also our famous grant deadline, which typically gives travel funds, but this year we'll be waiving the registration fee. So please look into that, and that's for typically underrepresented groups coming to our meeting. And of course, registration is open. My final slide has the upcoming webinars for November and December, so please take note and mark your calendars. There's going to be one on science communication next month, so please join us. And now let me introduce our speaker. Alaina G. Levine is an award-winning entrepreneur, STEM career consultant, science journalist, professional speaker, and corporate comedian. Her book, Networking for Nerds, has the honor of being named one of the top 5 books of 2015 by Physics Today magazine. She writes Your Unicorn Career, a careers column for the AAAS about finding your career bliss, and is a frequent speaker for the AAAS. And now for the main event. Alaina, please take it away.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you to the American Astronomical Society, and thank you to the astronomers, astrophysicists, cosmologists, and planetary scientists joining us today. I'm really enthusiastic about today's topic, navigating real-time leadership challenges, because it's not a topic that we often hear discussed in the astronomy educational experience. How to improve, how to hone, how to develop leadership skills so that you can meet dynamic challenges, dynamic changes that happen on a day-to-day basis. Of course, astronomy, STEM, academia, research, and larger and other ecosystems all are dynamic enterprises. We operate naturally in a changing enterprise that constantly adjusts itself day to day, often minute to minute. And that cannot be more magnified right now while we're in the middle of this pandemic. The pandemic and the related economic fallout and related perturbation, shall we say, in the ecosystem in which we are trying to operate are very difficult to navigate, are very difficult to operate in and be productive in. But in the midst of this opportunity, and it is an opportunity, is another opportunity, an opportunity to develop our leadership skills, to hone specific skills in leadership so that we can usher and shepherd our projects and our teams forward and navigate beyond this challenge. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So I'm very excited because I think it's an appropriate time and place even to present this talk. As Diane mentioned, this is being recorded, but you are welcome to take screenshots of any of my slides. You're welcome to take screenshots of me and post things. If you post anything online on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and so forth, tag us at AAS_office, at Alaina G. Levine, #networking for nerds. I want to be able to repost and promote you, so please tag us. And I'd like to invite you, as always, to join me on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn as the primary way that I share free career planning resources. We're talking invitations to other webinars, articles, templates, tip sheets, all sorts of different resources that will help you achieve your unicorn career, your dream job. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn URL is simply Alaina G. Levine, no need to customize, I can make sure that you are apprised of these resources. So what are we talking about today? I want to talk to you about a few different strategies for navigating and responding to leadership challenges in real time. We're going to discuss how we identify the needs of our team so that we can work collaboratively in this dynamic landscape, and articulate how you can use your STEM expertise, education, training, and knowledge to become an even more efficient leader. Hashtag spoiler alert, some of you have heard me say this before, but it bears repeating for you, the most amazing audience that I have ever had, and that's true. The idea of your STEM education being the foundation of helping you to be a stronger leader and a stronger team member is not something that I can overstate. In other words, the fact that you have chosen to study astronomy and the related subjects, and more broadly STEM, that in and of itself is a fantastic foundation to become a stronger leader, to become a more agile leader who can adapt and adopt to dynamic perturbations within the landscape that we are operating. You actually have an advantage compared to people who study other subjects. Because if you think about it, science itself, just in and of itself, is dynamic. It constantly changes. And it requires those of you who are operating in science, who are trying to unlock the mysteries of the universe to be able to measure the cosmos, it requires you to be able to react to new perturbations that happen at any given moment, to be able to adjust how you measure and what you look for and the types of experiments that you design, not to mention where you decide to point your telescope, of course, the different types of telescopes, and of course, the theory. The theory has to change according to new data that you're collecting. All of this is dynamic. In fact, it's almost a complex system. So you're already doing this naturally as part of your studies, as part of your work as astronomers and astronomy educated professionals. Let's just use this as a foundation to develop these leadership skills, which will help you in your career, which will help you be stronger and more agile in your professional space, no matter what profession you pursue. And it will also help you be stronger as a scientist. It's a feedback loop. Everything feeds upon each other. So let me start by talking about your team, because you will always have a team. And remember, even if you are a team of one, you have a team. So you want to be able to, if we're going to lead our team, which may consist just of us or others, we have to understand the motivation of the team. We have to understand the makeup of the team. So we have to understand, first of all, that the team's goal is to advance the organization's and the project's goal. That's what the team is put in place for. Understanding the goal is going to be very, very important, because oftentimes when we are faced with new challenges within a rapidly changing environment, we may lose sight of what the team's objective is. And our goal, and I'm going to share with you ideas about how to do this shortly, our goal, particularly in a rapidly changing environment, is to always focus back on what the goal is of our team. That will be how we can weather this storm. The team itself is contributing to the success of the department, the institution, and even the field. So I want you to understand the significance of the work that you're doing. And it serves as a fantastic training opportunity, particularly for early career STEM goddesses and gods like yourself. Of course, being a part of a team is fantastic training at any point of our career as well. But what's really great about being a member of the team is understanding that it gives you this really unique opportunity to demonstrate your leadership capacity. That doesn't mean that you have to be the formal quote unquote leader or manager of the team. Not at all. In fact, my colleague Sarah Andrews and my colleague Christine Kutsakaki talk about leadership without authority, meaning that you are able to lead a team or lead a project or lead yourself without being given the title or the specific directive that you are the manager, that you are the leader. You can lead without authority. And a lot of what I'm talking about today is in fact that. It's leading a team to success towards its goal without necessarily having been appointed or anointed as the king or the queen of this team, the leader of this team. But another thing about teams that are very interesting to me is that the culture of the team will determine how other people outside of the team, as well as inside the team, view you. And the outputs of the team are directly tied to your own reputation and brand. And remember, a brand is not a logo, it's not a cartoon character, it's not a tagline. A brand is simply a promise of value. And some of you have heard me talk about this, right? We all have our own brands, our own promises of value. At the very basic level, our brand is our promise to deliver excellence, dependability, and expertise in everything that we do. And so when we are producing outputs associated with our team, it is reflective on our promise of value. In other words, colleagues, collaborators, employers, the members of your communities, the members of your field, and other team members in the larger institution are looking to see what you are producing, and they are making decisions based on what the team is doing about your own individual promise of value and your own reputation. I tell you this because it's so important to understand that it's so important to understand that as a leader, you have a lot of power and a lot of responsibility, and not in a bad way, but in a wonderful way, to help your team succeed, to achieve that objective. And it is absolutely going to be reflective on you when you do achieve that goal, and reflective on the other members of the team when you achieve that goal, no matter whether you are a leader with authority or a leader without authority. Now, I want to give you another hashtag spoiler alert about you and the business of science, the business of astronomy. At any point in our career, and no matter what we study, and no matter what profession we are in, and I don't care if you are a student, a graduate student, a postdoc, I don't care if you're a professor or you work for a research institution, or maybe you work in another area within the research enterprise as an astronomy researcher, as a cosmologist, you are running a business. You will always have business elements. And it's very important to remember this, particularly if we are going to lead through a challenge, to understand the business aspects of the enterprise in which we are involved, the team, the enterprise, the business aspects of the team in which we are involved. For example, you have customers. Customers are anyone or anything that invests resources into you, into your team. So that could be money, for example, a granting agency giving your team money to be able to produce this research. In this case, the agency is the customer, as is the larger community, right? The larger citizenry who is investing in the federal government, for example, to invest money in us. If you are a professor, your students are customers because they are investing resources into the university through money. It could be through scholarships, but they are still getting something in exchange. So they're investing money, their tuition money, and they're getting in exchange their degree and all of the education and training associated with that. You will have products and services that you are developing. As a researcher, you are developing a service. You are unlocking information about the universe, about the cosmos, to share it with the field. You are producing knowledge and delivering knowledge. That is a service. You are doing that service in exchange for resources, money, time, facilities, other types of resources as well. There will also be stakeholders that you are interacting with, which could be collaborators or your PI. It could be granting agencies, your department, your institution, even your professional association. Even the AAS is a stakeholder in the work that you're doing. And of course, because we are operating a business that involves money, right? Whether you are being paid to do the work through a salary or being paid to do the work through a grant, there's always money involved. There will be budgeting and accounting and finance. There will be sales and marketing aspects associated with the work that you're doing. After all, when you write a grant proposal, do you write like a 2-line grant proposal? My work is interesting. Stars are cool. Give me $5 million. No, you don't say that. Stars are cool, by the way. Super, super cool. Or unless they're super, super hot, right? Yeah, you got it. But the thing is that you don't say that. You actually make a case as to why that agency should invest money in your research. Well, guess what? That's a marketing document. When you write a paper, when you write an article, you are writing a marketing document because you are sharing information about what you discovered with the community with the hope that they will invest resources. Maybe you're not going for a job right now. Maybe you're not going for money for my granting agency right now, but what you're doing is by sharing this information, by providing this service to the community, you are marketing your value to the community. So they know that this is your area of expertise. They know that this is part of your promise of value. And the same thing goes when you give a talk. I hope that you will attend the winter meeting. It's going to be a virtual meeting this year. It's going to be fantastic. I'm going to be there. There's going to be lots and lots of opportunities to present your work, either through the iPosters or through oral talks. And guess what? Anytime you give a poster, anytime you give a talk, you are marketing your value. You are communicating what it is that you do to contribute to the community, what it is that you do to advance the agenda of the field. So this is part of the business of science. And of course, depending on what type of research you do, chances are there's also safety and risk management and assessment going on, particularly if you are actually traveling. Of course, back in the day, in the before times when we actually traveled to meet collaborators and work within facilities such as telescopes and missions, there was risk associated with that. And that's part of running a business too. There could be vendor relations, of course, inventory, supply chain management, and of course, hiring and training, which can include the hiring, mentoring, and training of your staff, your postdocs, your colleagues, your students, your team members. I mention this because it's very important for you to understand that when you lead a team, you are not just leading a science team. You are leading a science team that is a business team as well. Successful leadership will mean that we have to leverage process engineering. So process engineering is exactly what it sounds like it is. It is developing a series of processes to produce something, to achieve a goal. And what I have found, my background's math and physics, my degree's in mathematics, I have another degree in anthropology. Some of you know I started in astronomy and physics at the University of Arizona, and I know we have some Tucson people joining us today. Yay Tucson, yay Cactus. I started as astronomy and physics major, then I was seduced by the dark side and got my degree in mathematics, but don't tell anybody. And I have identified in my entire career, not only in the way I look at my career, but the way I look at the problems that I solve as part of my job, I have recognized that my mathematical training, right, just like your physics and astronomy training, has helped me to produce processes which allow me to solve problems under the most untenable of situations and the most challenging of scenarios, like the pandemic right now. So what we can do as a successful leader is develop and implement processes that make sense for us, make sense for our team, make sense for the culture of the organization, the field, the project. Develop these processes for everything, for achieving the goal, for developing the proposal, for actually conducting the research. And utilize these processes to identify, articulate, and respond efficiently to real-time challenges like the ones we've been talking about. I have found that because of my mathematical training, I think very much logically. I think in terms of logic models, in terms of equations, A plus B plus C equals goal, right? So I have developed lots of different processes and systems using the concepts from process engineering and the training from my mathematics to be able to do it. You have to develop systems and processes that work for you based on the way you think, based on the way you solve problems, but they have to be reflect the culture of the team that you're working on as well, the culture of the organization and the field, and it has to also be appropriate for the nature of the work that you are doing. So the processes may change a little bit, but the fundamental ideas won't. So what we can do is we're aiming to find a balance, interestingly, between the process engineering, which is very logic focused, an equation, a checklist kind of scenario, with the soft skills of management and leadership and communications and risk management and so forth. There is a way to do this. I want to give you some definitions first about leadership, what I'm talking about. And then I also want to share with you the difference between leadership and management so you know where we're going and what we're talking about here. So Stephen Covey, many of you know him. I love the way he puts this. Leadership is communicating to people their worth and potential so clearly that they are inspired to see it in themselves. He says that leadership is a choice, not a position. Again, echoing my colleagues, Sarah and Christine, about the leadership without authority. It's a choice to be a leader, to help the team around you harness their own power, their own skills to be able to unleash it to solve the problem in a really novel and exciting and innovative way. That takes skill. It's not me managing you. It's not me pointing to you and saying, do this. That's not leadership. That's management in some way. It involves a creativity of being able to see what everyone can bring to the table. And I gotta say that this is really where appreciation and an understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion really shines. Because here, if I am gonna allow my team to be their brightest, their sharpest, their most innovative, I have to create a way, I have to create a culture for the team to know that when you come to me, I want to hear your thoughts. I want your voice heard. I want to be able to see you for 100% of who you are. Your authenticity is key to solving the problem every single time, particularly as we think about innovation. Authenticity is equated with innovation. And where does that authenticity come from? It comes from diversity, equity, and inclusion. When we have unique perspectives, when everybody feels that they are open and comfortable and empowered to be their authentic self, they bring their best self. They bring their best work. They bring all their skills, all their brilliance, all their views, which helps us solve the problem. I have to say that being a leader means that we have to create a way, a forum, a format, a culture in which the team we are operating in, whether we are leading with authority or leading without, that everyone on our team knows that their voice is valued 100%, and that we expect only 100% of their authenticity, because that's how we're going to achieve greatness. That's important. If I'm going to do that, I have to inspire trust, and I have to clarify purpose of the team, purpose of the goal, purpose of the project, purpose of the goal. Why are we doing this goal? I also have to align the system so that there's no conflict between what I say is important and what I measure to be important. We see that a lot with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I have to empower you so that your talent is unleashed 100% of the time in 100% of the ways that it can be unleashed. Peter Drucker says, one does not quote unquote manage people. The task is to be able to lead people, and the goal is to make productive the specific strengths and knowledge of every individual. That's how leadership that's how leadership is 100% aligned with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the difference between management and leadership, because you'll hear those words interchanged, but there is a difference. So I want to clarify for you so you know what I'm talking about, and you'll begin to see for yourself that you may actually be both a manager and a leader. But ideally, what we always want to do is lead, always. So what is the difference? According to Warren Bennis, I love these types of analogies here. The manager administers, the leader innovates, creates something new. The manager is a copy, the leader is an original. The manager maintains, but the leader develops the talent in the team, develops the skills, develops processes to move forward. This is interesting to me. He says that the manager is focused on systems and structure, which of course is what I just told you to do, right, to create processes. But he also says the leader is focused on people. And I think this is a great point to clarify what I'm talking about and how it is in line with what he's talking about. Because when I say develop processes and develop systems, I'm not saying that you become only focused on the process. Because within the process, within the system, within the framework in which we are operating, we do not find robots. We do not find zeros and ones. We find human beings for the most part, which means that the humans themselves are influencing and impacting the system in unique but very potentially minute ways every single moment that they are part of the team. They are contributing to this project, aiming to achieve the agenda. So I have to be mindful of, yes, we put a process in place to achieve this goal, but that there are people in that goal, people in that team that are human beings with souls. And I think a great way to think about this is in the middle of this pandemic. We all have, wherever we are in our career right now, and even if you are unemployed, I'm sure that you are trying to develop a way to move forward, get a job, advance your career in some way while serving your community. No matter what we're doing right now in the pandemic, we are trying to move towards a goal. So we may be putting, and this is something I've talked about in previous webinars, we may be putting in place processes to allow us to achieve that objective. However, we're not operating in a vacuum, and we ourselves are not robots. We're in the middle of a pandemic. It's a crisis situation. It's a very challenging environment. Under normal circumstances, this is not normal, people. You know it. So I have to be respectful of myself and respectful of my team. I have to honor myself and honor my team. I have to be compassionate with myself and compassionate with my team, because this is this is an extremely difficult circumstance in which we are trying to be productive. Oh my goodness. So I am going to, yes, I may develop processes, but I'm going to recognize that you may not necessarily be able to achieve every single goal or mini goal that I've put in place with each of these processes. But that's what a leader does. A leader notices what is changing the system. Is the team moving forward to the goal? Is the team having challenges that are individual based, that are human based, that have nothing to do with the logic model? And if they do notice this, if the leader does notice this, does the leader address that? Does the leader focus on helping those people move to the next goal in a way that is compassionate and honors and respects that person and what they are going through right now? That is what a leader does. If it was just a manager, they would say, hey, why haven't you turned in this paper? It's been 3 months. If it was a leader, I'd say, I see you haven't turned in your paper. I want to understand what's going on, and maybe I can help you. Can you tell me how things are at home? And of course, at home is not so bananas right now. So if a leader, if my team member or my leader, my team lead came to me and said that, I would be very appreciative, because they would be acknowledging my human existence and my human lived experience, that it is not operating in a vacuum. And that's, I think, an important aspect of what we have to do as leaders and as members of our team as well, especially when we're not leading with authority. But the leader is somebody who inspires trust, where the manager relies on control. And if you think about, like, I want you to do this and you're going to do that now, that's not what a manager does. Excuse me, that's not what a leader does. The manager has a very short range view, but the leader has a long range perspective. And I would actually go one step further. I would say that the manager tends to operate almost like they're in a two-dimensional plane, like an ant in a two-dimensional plane, whereas a leader knows that they're a third-dimensional or a fourth-dimensional creature, and they see the two-dimensional plane below them, and they see connections from point X to point Y. The manager won't see that because they're in the plane, right? The leader is up here. They see that A can connect to B. They see that person X would be able to help person Y because they see those alignments. They see those bridges. That's a great perspective to have. The manager asks how, when are you going to get this done? How are you going to do this? But the leader doesn't ask that. The leader asks, what are you going to do? Why are you going to do it? And I would go on to venture and say, add to that, the leader says, how can I help you? How can I enable your success? When you hear a leader say, how can I enable your success? That is a really fantastic thing to say. It's also the mark of a really positive leader, because that's my goal as a leader. I want to enable your success. But the manager has their eye always on the bottom line, right? What is the goal going to do for us? Whereas the leader's eye is on the horizon. The manager accepts the status quo, but the leader challenges it. They become a challenge agent. They see challenges. They see opportunities. They see walls that can be knocked down that are impeding innovation. They see gaps in systems that could potentially be filled with the team's ingenuity. They see pain points that could potentially be alleviated by the team's brilliance and knowledge and know-how. The manager does things right, but the leader does the right thing. So this is how we think about leadership versus management. Now, a successfully led team will always have a vision. It's what you see for your team, what you see for your group. It will solve a problem. So that's an important thing. Some of you have heard me talk about this. In fact, whenever you are hired for a job, you are hired to solve problems. Teams solve problems, organizations solve problems, fields solve problems. So your team is going to be solving a problem or many problems together. That's the discovery or the innovation or both. It has a brand. It has its own promise of value. It has a plan to fulfill that vision and deliver that value to the customers who are going to invest resources. and it has that talented team that understands the value and the important role that they play, not only in achieving the goal, but contributing to the larger community, to the larger field. When we're thinking about leadership in a dynamic landscape, we have to be ready because you know what? Let's pretend, oh my gosh, why not? Let's do this for a moment. Let's pretend we're not in the middle of a pandemic. Let's pretend everything is peachy keen and super great. And wow, it's so fantastic, you guys. Yes, right? It's so great, right? Well, guess what? Tomorrow, something can happen. Tomorrow, we could get a new data point. Tomorrow, somebody could leave the team and we suddenly have a gap in skills. Tomorrow, we might actually need a new type of device or instrument or have to code something new. Or tomorrow, there might be a breakdown in the systems that we have put in place. In other words, a dynamic landscape is happening all the time. The system, the ecosystem, the institution, the team, the field, the communities that you are operating in are always dynamic. There are even complex problems, in my opinion, complex systems that are changed in real time by two types of stimuli. The first type of stimuli is internal to the system. Those are the participants, the individuals, the team members, yourself. The other types of stimuli are external. So they're coming from the system, the ecosystem itself. So we have constant stimulation, constant perturbations. This happens on a regular basis. Why not leverage that? Why not harness that ability to be able to do it in normal, quote unquote, normal, unpandemic times, so that when we are faced with an extraordinarily difficult challenge, like what we're dealing with right now, we are ready to go. In fact, what we're doing is we are building mental muscles right now that can help us navigate any kind of dynamic landscape. The challenges that we are facing right now with all these different stimulations and perturbations, one thing to think about is that every time there is a perturbation, every time there is an input, a challenge occurs. When that challenge occurs, that means that there is an opportunity. Challenges can be personnel related. They could be that people leave or new people come in. They could be that somebody doesn't know how to do X. It could be that there is a chemistry issue between two people on the team or a conflict that is arising between two members of the team. It could be product or project related or service related. It could be production or distribution related. For example, you writing a paper. You haven't written your paper yet. It's been a while, maybe a couple of weeks or a couple of months. That's distribution, that's production related. It's related to how you are interacting and managing and leading in this system, in this pandemic system. There could also be challenges that are defined by the team and the project interacting with the overall ecosystem, as well as ecosystem induced, such as the pandemic itself. But the great news, astronomy, astrophysics, cosmology, and planetary science, goddesses and gods around the Earth, around the galaxy, around the universe, and other multiverses too, is that every time there is a challenge, it makes you stronger, more agile, smarter, more efficient, more able to pivot and quickly address the next real-time challenge in an even better, stronger, and more agile manner. The way I like to think about it is I live in Tucson. I am a runner. There are a lot of hills in Tucson. So I am often running up hills with a very steep incline and maybe running down hills occasionally too. Now, when I am faced with a hill, depending on the day that I'm running, depending on how I'm feeling, depending on the different stimulations that I'm getting from the ecosystem, from the pandemic, from the economic fallout, from the people that I interact with, from the things that I'm thinking about relating to my own projects and job, I will face that mountain, that hill, in a different way every single time. Now, sometimes I will be able to run up that hill. Sometimes I will have to walk up that hill. Sometimes I will walk up that hill backwards. Sometimes I will crawl up that hill. Sometimes I will be crawling up that hill backwards while crying hysterically, begging for a donut and a cupcake. But you know what? I am doing it one foot after another or one hand after another, because I know that every time I face a hill, the more gift that I give myself, the bigger gift that I give myself by going up that hill, no matter how hard it is that day, how challenging it is, how difficult it is, I am giving myself a gift of being stronger more agile to be able to face the next hill, the higher hill, the more inclined of a hill, the next time. And it's exactly the same with facing challenges. The stronger we are strong now because of all the hills that we have climbed before us. So when you are given a gift, and I do say it is a gift, of a hill, of a challenge in your career, like what we're facing right now, let's look at it as an opportunity to build those mental muscles so that we are stronger for the next opportunity, and that we allow our team and give our team the ability to harness their own internal power and abilities so that they can navigate this challenge in real time as well. With this in mind, I would like to give you 4 very specific strategies that you can utilize to respond to and navigate real-time challenges. And these are strategies that I personally use. I personally have used them in the pandemic. And they are strategies, interestingly, that you can mix and match. You don't have to use just one. You can use aspects of different ones and even perhaps do all 4, depending on the type of challenge that you are faced with. I'm going to walk you through all of these, but let me just give you the quick introduction. So the first one is something that my dear mother always said, which is being less reactive, more contemplative. We're going to do that. Number 2 is what I call branching. This is where we identify the perturbed data pivot point. When did the system shift? The system was moving in this direction and suddenly, boom, it's going in another direction. Suddenly there was a data point that caused the shift, that caused the agenda to be adjusted. What caused that? We're going to actually branch back in time to collect that data point, to find out what that data point was. And we can do that through processes. We can do that, and it will allow us to actually plot a course to move back towards the original plot that we were going towards. The third is an analysis of our processes that we've put in place. What failed? What worked differently? What could we have done differently? How can we adjust this process next time or even right now in real time? And the fourth strategy is identifying needs and wants. This is especially useful in the middle of a crisis, in the middle of a challenge, if we are going to lead through and beyond it. Because oftentimes we will lose sight of the agenda, right, of the goal of the project, of the team, of ourselves, which means that we will lose sight of what we need and what we want to do. And we might even combine the two and get confused as to which is a want and which is a need. By being able to clarify and specify which is a need and which is a want, even in the middle of a challenge, we can actually move forward. So it's very, very useful to be able to identify those. So I'm going to walk you through all 4 of these now. So let's start with less reactive, more contemplative. Very, very useful to be able to stop in the middle of a whirlwind, in the middle of a tornado, and be able to say, okay, close my eyes for a second. Okay, what is actually happening here? Now, instead of reacting immediately, being contemplative about the situation, taking the data around you, understanding what are the what are the stimuli that are causing the perturbations right now. This is especially relevant and vital in both engineering and science-based systems, because, you know, as you are adjusting, as things are shifting, you do want to not necessarily react right away. Of course, there is one caveat, and you know what it is. I'm going to get to that in a moment. But what I can say is that something that I have done, particularly during this pandemic, when I feel like I'm in crisis mode, mental mode, I have 17 things I'm trying to do at once. I have 300 emails I'm trying to respond to. My house is all crazy. Things are everywhere. There's dirty dishes in the sink. There's a kid, well, I don't have a kid, but maybe there's a kid screaming over there. There's a cat screaming over here, maybe walking into the screen. There's all sorts of craziness happening around me. I have to stop for a moment and just take a breath, admittedly, even a literal breath, to catch my breath and try and understand what is the actual issue right now. In the middle of a crisis, in the middle of a challenge, please take a moment to compose yourself. You are the leader. Remember that you are the leader. And this moment can actually allow you to clarify the actual challenge, which is the key. The challenge that is causing us to potentially move beyond what we were doing, or that takes us away from our goal, or that is stimulating our system, causing us to dissipate as a team and not remain cohesive. So determine how you will begin to collect relevant data so that you can actually understand what is actually causing the challenge, what is causing the issue. There's a larger crisis here. There's a smaller challenge within that crisis that we are experiencing. What is that actual challenge? By being more contemplative, you can actually identify the challenge so that you can separate the noise versus the signal. That's the key here. There's going to be a lot of noise. There is a lot of noise in this crisis that we are trying to navigate in, through, and beyond. What we have to do is isolate the signal. Well, guess what? You can be confident that because you are a STEM goddess or god, you actually have that ability. That's what you've been doing in astronomy. That's what you've been doing in your studies, even if you're early in your career. So this is actually something that you can do. So as you are in a crisis, if you see that your brain is literally going in, maybe not literally, but figuratively going in like 17 different directions, this is the moment where you should stop, take a breath, resolve to be more contemplative, and start thinking about what is the crisis, right? That's the pandemic. What is the personal crisis that I'm faced with? Maybe I'm about to lose my job, or I've lost my job and I need money to pay my rent or whatever. And there could be other challenges that you're facing within the larger crisis. Once you are contemplative, you can see the challenge for what it actually is. You can see the signal versus the noise. Now, there's one caveat to this business of less reactive, more contemplative. And you know the answer, it's a safety issue. Safety has to be number one for all of our teams, no matter what we're doing. And when I say safety, I'm not just talking about the physical safety of your team, like if they're traveling or if they're on a mountaintop actually utilizing a telescope, or in a clean room using very unique and detailed equipment to that, like lasers, for example, and difficult and dangerous equipment to design pieces of the mission. I'm talking about not just the physical safety of you and your team, but the mental, emotional, and even spiritual safety of your team. So what that means is that if there is an attack on the safety of your team members, this is not necessarily the time to be less contemplative, right? If I see my child about to walk into traffic, I'm not going to take a moment to, okay, what's actually happening here? Let me just think about this. Oh, I want to work through what's the signal versus the noise. No, that's not going to happen. I'm going to grab that kid. I'm going to grab that kid and remove them from the traffic. And then later on, I can do the contemplation after I stop screaming, right? Similarly, if you or your colleagues are in danger of any kind and do not undervalue the danger of emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being, if you or your colleagues are in danger of any kind, you have to react to get them out of that danger at that moment. Later on, you can contemplate what brought to that point. What could we have done differently? You can, in fact, enact the other three strategies to identify how it led to a dangerous situation. So safety is number one for a leader. It is always going to be my prime directive, in fact, my prime directive to make sure that I myself and my team are safe in all manners of that word. So I will do what I can to make sure that that happens. But notwithstanding, we want to aim to be a little bit less reactive and more contemplative in how we identify how the system is changing in front of our eyes. The second strategy that we can use to navigate real-time leadership challenges and indeed lead through real-time challenges is branching. So as a mathematics major, one of my favorite classes, the class that actually stays with me to this day, and I graduated with my math degree in the 90s, the 1690s. So you can imagine if I'm still thinking about this topic that I learned 400 years ago, today it's valuable to me. And in fact, it is invaluable to me. And what I remember from my mathematics class, in particular the proofs class that I had to take, was a lot of the branching, the probability streaming, to use a phrase that another person used. If this, then that. If that, then this. The way we are navigating, moving forward in time, is like branching probability streams. So if you can imagine a bifurcation diagram, we're moving forward in time, something happens and we shift, and then something else happens and we shift. And I'm not saying that we ourselves branch into 16 different directions. What I'm saying is that it causes our system to be able to potentially go in different directions. I even think about branching when I'm giving speeches. Even today, I use branching to help me solve the problem of giving speeches. For example, when I tell a joke or when I use certain words in my speaking, because I'm a professional speaker and I've been doing this so much and for so long, I can often identify the words that I'm going to use 6, 7, even 8 words in advance. I'm doing that literally right now as I'm speaking with you. So that helps me. But what's interesting to me is that because I'm identifying the words in advance and the ideas that I want to share with you in advance of me speaking them, actually sharing them verbally, what I'm doing is I'm setting up a system in my brain that if you didn't react or if I didn't communicate something in the most elucidated way, that it wasn't quite clear for you, I would shift over here. Or if I told a joke, and this was in the before times when I did in-person gigs, if I told a joke and everybody's eyes just glazed over and nobody said anything, they didn't even crack a smile, I had a branch in my head that if I told a joke and nobody laughed, I would go over here and say this. If I told the joke and somebody laughed, I would add something to it and then maybe expand in this direction and then maybe expand in that direction and onward and onward and onward. We're doing exactly the same thing in challenging environments. It's data collection at its finest. So I want you to think about branching in this way. We were on a road with our team. We were on a path, and maybe this path is going up into the upper quadrant of our chart, right? We were on this path. Something happened at a moment in time that caused the system to change. And suddenly we're down here. Suddenly the path is more circuitous. Maybe it's more windy, or maybe it just dipped completely and now it's going downhill completely. With branching, what we can do is we can actually map backwards through time to look at data points past, present, and future to better understand what changed the system in that moment. So we start with the past. We map backwards in time. When did the actual perturbation or the challenge occur, the stimulation that caused the system to shift? What was happening in that moment with the individuals, including myself and you, with the team as a unit, a cohesive unit, with the system, with the ecosystem at that moment? What actually caused the perturbation? These questions are going to help you collect data. You need data, data. OMG, you guys, seriously, you need some data. And you know what? STEM goddesses and gods, you know how to collect data, you know how to mine data, you know how to interpret data, you know how to convert data into actionable information. That's what we're doing right now. First, we're collecting data. So we look at the past. Then we use that to actually analyze what's happening in the present. What is the data that we can collect that can help us understand what the actual challenge that is happening right now is? And then we can map into the future. What is the appropriate response for the future? And how can we get the system back on track? So it involves data collection while we analyze how the system branched out. That's what branching is. So when I give a speech, going back to that example, when I give a speech, if even when let's say I told a joke and we were in person and I saw nobody laugh, in my mind, I am doing this type of branching because I'm going back to see what did I say? What happened in the moment when I said X that caused this joke not to land? What happened in the moment that I told this joke that caused me to say the next thing or influenced me to say the next thing, which led to people not understanding my point? So branching can happen in real time, going backwards in time, but it can also happen during that contemplation period, being less reactive, more contemplating, using branching to take data. It's very interesting how that works. The third way to navigate real-time leadership challenges and lead through these real-time challenges is through process analysis or analyzation. We are going to look at the processes that we were using to solve this problem and identify, did the challenge arise because a process failed? Did it arise because a process is no longer applicable or relevant given new stimuli, given the perturbation, given the way the individuals in the system are reacting? Does the process need to be adapted to the new stimulation? Does the process need to be adapted to the larger ecosystem challenges and changes? This allows you to do a deep dive into the process interfaces with the team and the system. So not only, so we're taking, with branching, we were taking data points. With process analysis, we are looking at the larger processes that we've been using to go forward and that we're going to use to go forward. It's a deeper dive, not only into the processes, but interestingly, it's how we individually interface with the processes. It could be that in the middle of that one aspect of the process that I have put in place as the team lead is to create a, maybe I've used Slack, for example, to better communicate, to always communicate with the team how, so that here's an example. Maybe before the pandemic, we were on Slack. Our team was using Slack as our communication channel so we could keep track of things. That was the process that we used to keep track, to move forward, to advance towards our goal. But perhaps because of the pandemic, people are not interfacing with Slack as often as they were, or they're interacting with Slack in a different way. Maybe they're not, admittedly, interestingly, ironically, they're not on Slack as often as they were before. So there's an interface issue between the process itself and the individuals. I have to be able to distill down and identify what is happening at that interface. It's so interesting to me to do this because it really draws on our STEM background in a really logical and robust manner. And the final way that we can navigate real-time leadership challenges as a leader is by doing a needs and wants analysis. So both needs and wants, knowing needs and wants, are vital to keeping the team functioning and productive. And both relate to the mission, brand, and goals of the team. But as I mentioned, oftentimes in the middle of a challenging environment, in the middle of a crisis, the needs and the wants can potentially become confused. This can cause us to go off our road. It can cause us to have a pivot point towards non-success. We need to get back on that road. So let's do a needs and wants analysis. Let's look first in the past. Let's make a list of our needs and our wants from this team. What do we want from this team? What do we need from this team? What do we want and need for this team? What do we need and want for this project to achieve? If we're going to achieve this goal, what do we need to happen? But also, what would we like to happen? What would we want to happen? In the present, we're going to take a look at this list. Now we have data about what our needs and wants are as it relates to this project in a vacuum. But we're not operating in a vacuum, right? So now we're going to take this list that we created about the past and we're going to compare it to the present. We're going to examine this list and compare it to data about the challenge that we're facing right now, which comes from the branching. And then what we can do is we can adjust the lists for going forward in the future. Because it might be that our needs have changed. It might be that our wants have changed. It might be that they have changed places. That maybe what we wanted to do for our team or what we wanted to do on this project before the pandemic has now become a need, or vice versa. Needs and wants are very valuable data in navigating through very challenging environments. So there are your 4 examples, 4 strategies: less reactive, more contemplative; branching, the data collection at its finest; process analysis, understanding the processes and understanding the interfaces that we individually have with the processes; and of course the needs and wants list. And knowing now all 4 of these strategies, you can see how you can mix and match and use all of these in concert with each other. Our safety always has to be our #1 priority at any given point. Please be respectful. Please be kind. Please be aware that when your team's mental safety is in peril, that it's not just there's not just a fallout because the project won't be achieved. There's a fallout because the individual human beings that you are working with are in danger. This is part of the reflection of understanding that we're part of a community here. I will want to be able to have your back to make sure all aspects of your safety are my number one concern. You're going to use multiple strategies in concert with each other at any given time, oftentimes in real time, sharing back and forth with different strategies, collecting lots and lots of data. And yet at some point in addressing the challenge, interestingly, you will have to respond without all the data that you need or want, interestingly enough. In other words, you will not, as much as we want to rely on logic and rely on facts, sometimes we will have to respond based on instinct, based on experience. And that's where your gut is really important. And that relates also to the safety, especially the emotional and mental safety of our colleagues here. Because how can they use their gut instinct to the best of their ability, which might admittedly be a physical safety issue? They may have to respond with their gut instinct for safety. How can we expect them to be able to have the ability to tap into their gut instinct if their mental safety is in trouble? In other words, think about that example that I used of me with a kid at the curb. A kid is about to run into traffic. I have to protect that child. I have to, by my gut instinct, grab that kid and pull them out of danger. How can I expect to do that if I am emotionally being harassed, if I am mentally being driven down, if my spiritual, mental, and emotional well-being are in peril? I can't be focused on the physical safety of that kid. That metaphor is exactly the same in our scientific endeavors, in our careers. We are building our leadership muscles now so that you can get better attuned to identifying and responding to challenges at higher levels, steeper inclines, higher hills. And I have come to understand that we can really appreciate these challenges. Give yourself the gift of understanding that this challenge is an opportunity for us to serve our community, for us to engage and embolden our community to be their best, to be their 100% authentic self, so they can be the most innovative, agile, and strong leaders that we all can in the middle of this crisis and beyond. So with that, I want to thank you so much. I want to tell you about an opportunity that the AAS is offering members. I am a professional STEM career consultant, and the AAS is providing AAS members the opportunity to meet with me privately for a 20-minute or longer appointment for $20. That is deeply discounted. So you can meet with me for a career consultation privately. We'd be doing it via Zoom. Our conversation will remain private and confidential between you and I. We can meet for 20 minutes or increments of 20 minutes for $20. To discuss any career question you have. So if you're looking to get a job, if you're newly unemployed, if you're looking to move forward in your career, if you have an issue with your advisor, your colleague, if you have a leadership issue, I can help you with that. So if you're interested in one of these private one-on-one career consultations with me, please email my friend and colleague, Diane Frendeck, diane.frendeck@AAS.org. She can help you to book those sessions. And once I know that you have that set up, I will contact you to actually put it in your schedule. And I also want to tell you, are you going to the Division of Planetary Sciences virtual conference? I hope you are. It's going to be out of this world, or at least out of this particular part of the solar system. So guess what? They got a career center. Go to the career center, engage. I'm going to be doing one-on-one career consultations with DPS as well. As I mentioned, you are welcome to continue tweeting, posting, taking photographs. Join me on LinkedIn, Alaina G. Levine. And I am not going to wish you good luck because you don't need it. You are astronomy stars. I will say enjoy your amazing adventure because you're in for an extraordinary opportunity as you endeavor to achieve your unicorn career. So thank you so much. And now I am here to answer any questions you have. Dan, what do we got?
Let's see. This one is from Lacey.
Hey, Lacey.
And she asks, what are some ways that leaders can inspire trust within the team? I'm especially wondering about this in new teams that have not worked together previously or have not established interpersonal bonds.
So thank you, Lacey. Very important question, especially right now. And I think it's an important question for all of us, honestly, at any given time. How can we inspire trust? So if I was on a new team and I was a leader on that team, whether I was the appointed leader or I was just a member of that team, the first thing I would do is endeavor to understand the culture of this team. So I would meet with different members of the team, and if I was the actual leader with authority of the team, I would meet individually with the team members to help them understand what our goal is, what our agenda is, to help them understand what the culture is, to help understand how they perceive the culture, how they perceive the agenda, what they're aiming to do to move the organization forward. And I would ask the simple phrase, what can I do to enable your success? And I think that that's such an important question to ask for leaders, because it really does take the burden off of the other person and puts it on the leader to be able to provide the tools, to be able to provide the insight and assistance and resources that will enable the other person to achieve success. And what that does is it inspires trust in the leader. I want to give you a citation, a reference for where I got this idea from. I wrote an article for Science Magazine, I believe it was last year. And in the article, and we could even find it, and I can email it to you perhaps also, or if you can't find it, just let me know. The article was called Inclusivity for All, something like making your lab more accessible. And it was about how to make your research group and your laboratory more open, more inclusive, more accessible to disabled and differently abled members of our community. And one person that I interviewed, and I believe, if I recall correctly, she actually is an astronomer. I hope I'm correct in this. I can't recall. If I got that wrong, I apologize. But she told me that and this is in the article, she told me that when she interviewed for a job with a major company, and she has a disability, the decision maker in interviewing her said to her during the interview, "What can I do to enable your success?" And suddenly she had a mind shift, because it was the first time that she herself, as a differently abled, as a disabled person, did not have to bring it up herself to ask for new tools, to ask for resources that could help her to achieve the goal of the team. Instead, the individual, the team leader, the decision maker was saying, what can I do to enable your success? When the burden is shifted, trust is developed. So I appreciate that she brought that up. That was where I got that phrase. And it's something that I continue to say and quote because it's such an important thing. That's how we build trust, by enabling the success of the team and by letting the team members know that we are there to help them. And this goes for whether you are a leader with authority or without, quite frankly. So Lacey, thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, the next one is from Rachel. Do teams need both managers and leaders? Should they be the same person or different people?
What a great question. Thank you for that question. Appreciate it. So I think that the answer is yes. So there is a place for a team to have a leader and to have a manager. Oftentimes they are the same person. And in fact, a leader does in fact need to manage certain aspects, right? For example, if there's a budget, you can't just inspire trust to be able to help us to stay on budget. You have to be able to say to your team, okay, we have $500,000 that we are going to be spending in this way. I can certainly engage you in a conversation about, do you think we could invest this money in a different way? Do you think there's another way that we could do this for a cheaper amount of money or a cheaper amount of resources? But I think there has to be elements of management that the leader is engaged in. So I think that oftentimes they can be the same person. However, when you are leading without authority as a team member, I think it's also helpful to have management skills and to use those management skills too, because it will allow you to stick to the processes of achieving the goal. So I think there's a balance there. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, this one is from Grant. When you talk about designing processes and systems for yourself and for your team, how do these usually manifest? What tools or apps do you take advantage of? And then a follow-up question is, how do you organize your own projects, goals, and action items?
So Grant, thank you again for that, another really wonderful question. So the way I think, and I'll answer the second part first, the way I manage my problems, the jobs that I work on, and think about this, as a freelancer, I have many different clients, different types of clients, different types of projects, and I always am working on multiple projects at any given time. So in a particular day, I'm writing an article, I'm giving a speech, I'm serving on a team working towards a grant, I'm doing career consultations, I'm doing other types of outputs. So the way I think is very structured in terms of X plus Y plus Z. So I actually will use, believe it or not, even in this day and age, a pad of paper that will help me make an outline for what I'm going to do each day. Oftentimes, I will whittle it down to even what I'm going to do each hour. And what I've found is that, of course, I will not necessarily be able to stick to that process, but it allows me to manage my time, interestingly, to manage my time in an appropriate way. And because I'm leading, I can adjust that process as I go. So if I didn't spend this entire hour achieving the full article that I was trying to write, I will adjust the next hour, or I might shift to 5 to 6 p.m. tonight to add time to work on the article instead. So I'm being very flexible in the way I design it. But it is very much something that I really appreciate, handwriting things out. Now, when we're dealing with projects that are millions of dollars and lots of people who are working across continents, that's not always easy. So for example, right now I'm working on a project that's similar to that. We have about 30 people who are on this project. They are in many different locations, and we are all trying to keep track according to a schedule that is very complicated, that changes day to day, and there's a lot of moving parts. So one resource that we're using, and I'm sure you are aware of this, is we use Box. We use a Google Drive type of situation with every file so that we're able to see and keep track of who's changing the file in real time. We have scheduling materials that we use that are in that Google Drive. We use Slack for our communications, and we've made sure that everybody knows to only use Slack and to use certain channels in Slack for different types of aspects of the project. So I think there's a number of different, and this goes back to your first part of your question, I think there's a number of different online and cloud-based tools that you can access, and you can combine that with personal tools that make sense for you. If you are somebody who likes to write things down, or you need a whiteboard or a blackboard to keep track of deadlines, which I have done in the past too, then do that. It might be a combination, but a lot of this is also experimentation. Trying a process, seeing if it works, then doing the data analysis, doing the process interface analysis to see, did this work? Were there any failures? If so, how can I adjust this for next time? So I hope that was helpful. I think, Diane, given the time, if we'll take one more question, then if people have additional questions, please feel free and email me.
Actually, there are no other questions, but you got some shout outs, and someone said leadership classes are often taught only to managers, and thank you for making this workshop open to everyone, whether they have management roles on teams or not.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I really want you to understand your power as an astronomy educated professional, no matter where you are, and that power, with heavy lies the crown of being an astronomy goddess and god in this universe. With that power comes the responsibility of managing, of leading, of being an effective business professional as well. So I appreciate that you appreciated what I had to say. Thank you.
Great presentation, Alaina. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you all. Thank you. It's been my pleasure, my privilege, and my honor, as always, to work with you. I hope you'll join us for the next webinar on the 18th of November. We're going to do a panel discussion on science communications careers. Please join us. More information for that to come, and join me at the DPS and the winter meeting. We're going to have a lot of different fun activities, engagement activities, and networking opportunities too. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.